My name's Janice, and I live in Western Washington, and I came to David because my brother died suddenly. When Tony, my brother's girlfriend, called and told us that he had died, she couldn't talk. All she could do was cry, and I couldn't really even understand her, and I was hoping that she was telling me something else, but I heard it right. David had talked to my daughter Sarah and said that he was not available because he was traveling. And then David had called me later, and I was crying, and he said that he was traveling, but he would be somewhere at 7 o'clock that evening, and that if it was all right, he would call me and we could try to get with my brother's spirit. He had got the flu. May 15th, he was sick with the flu, and he passed suddenly on June 3rd. My brother was not a drinker. He didn't smoke. He didn't do drugs. He was very fit. He was 53 years old, and this was a shock. And his girlfriend of 4 years, she had no idea what his end of life wishes were. Our mother wanted him to be buried down in California with our brother and our dad, but my sister, myself, and his girlfriend didn't believe that he would want that. And he says, I see an island with no bridges connecting it, and over the ocean with a sunset. And so at that point, we knew where he wanted to be, because every year we would go fishing for a month we would fish at a place called Race Rock in Canada, and he loved it there, and so we took that as that's where he would like to be one day. When David called, I was skeptical as to if anybody could really help me with things I've seen on TV, like the Long Island Medium, and she's able to help people, but I was really skeptical that I could really get any kind of help. But when David just said the very first things that he said was perfect about things that were real and I knew to be true, I was just amazed, and I felt a certain amount of calm come over me that we were going to get some help. And David said, well, I haven't been feeling well for about 3 weeks now. Yeah, I've been really sick, but I wasn't supposed to die. And that was exactly how long my brother had been ill. And in talking with David, he said, he told us how he died. He said that I died at home on my kitchen floor, and I had a pain in the back of my head, and there are 2 small animals with me, and my brother had 2 Shih Tzus that he loved that were with him. And he told us that I was found by a woman who I loved so much. And I was so happy to see her when she got here. But then I got really angry because she was inconsolable, and I couldn't touch her, I couldn't hug her, I couldn't tell her that I couldn't make it back. And that really made me angry. And he was found by his girlfriend, Tony. And they were supposed to get married in December. And he told us that when he fell down, he had banged his nose. And he did. And that my daughter asked if he was afraid or if he was scared, and he said he was. He was very afraid for about 5 to 7 minutes, and his hands and feet got really cold, and he was scared. And then our dad was there and took him that fast. And I asked if he'd seen Mark yet, and David didn't know who Mark is. And David had no idea who Mark was, but through the Spirit says, no, I haven't seen Mark yet, but Dad says I will. And I just think it's so incredible because David had all the answers. Okay, so there was Patty, me, Harry, Mark, and we all had the same father, and we were all 18 months apart. Every child was 18 months apart. And then 12 and a half years later, my mom had another child, has a different father, and his name is William, but we call him Billy. Mark, who would be 3 years younger than me, he had a bicycle accident at the high school he went to. He flipped his bicycle. He was trying to jump a planter outside. He was showing off for a cheerleader. And so he jumped the planter once, and it was really neat. So then the cheerleader says, oh, that's really neat. Can you do it again? So he went to do it again. His back tire hit the planter, and he flipped his bike. And the only injuries that it looked like he had sustained were his knuckles. And so he went over and played basketball with some of his friends, and then he rode his bike home. And when he got home, he told my mom that he had a really bad headache. And my brother Butch lived with my mom, and so did Billy. Patty and I did not. And my mom called Jim and me, my husband, and me, and she's, Mark's acting like he's drunk. Something's wrong with him. Can you guys come and take him to the hospital? And I said, well, call an ambulance, but she didn't. And so we ran over and we took him to the hospital, and he had massive head injuries, and he died. So then, 4 years later, our dad died. He drank himself to death, and he was 41. And so that was just like the beginning of just a lot of really, sadness. Just for a minute. There's just so much, there's just so much that was so right. David had showed us 107-309. He kept saying he wants you to pay attention to 107-309. And David says, is that an address or something? And we didn't know what it was. We didn't know these numbers. We had no idea. But my daughter Sarah, she was taking notes, and so she had written them down. About 3 o'clock in the morning, my sister jumps out of bed and she says, "Where's those notes? Where's those numbers? I think I know what they mean." And so I turned on the light and I'm getting the numbers, and she's putting her glasses on, and she goes to her purse and she pulls out 2 keys from his safe deposit boxes. Those were the numbers. There were 3 numbers on each. They were the numbers. So anyhow, that to me is way beyond any kind of coincidence. In the process of all this, my brother had, his spirit was starting to fade, and he had told David that we would know when he was near, because we would see two hawks flying together. And so when we flew to Montana, and his girlfriend Tony picked us up, we were in my brother's car, and we were left the airport. We were on our way to the mortuary to plan his funeral. There was Tony was driving, Patty was in the front seat, and I was in the back seat behind Tony, the driver. And we're driving along, and there's railroad tracks on the left side of us. And so I looked over, and I could see a lot of tank cars, but there was a helicopter in this field. And I looked over because of the helicopter, and there were two hawks flying right with us on our way to the funeral home. And so my sister looked back at me, and she says, "That's our brother. He's telling us that we're doing the right thing." When my sister and I, we had gone to one of the banks where he had a safe deposit box, and we found in the safe deposit box he had some biblical coins. And then we didn't know where the other box was. We had the key, so we went around the city looking for banks. We got the yellow pages out, and we went to every bank and said, "Are these your keys?" Up on a hill. This bank sat up on the hill, and it overlooked the highway and the airport. So when we went in, we were looking out the window, and there were two sets of hawks just flying all around, just soaring. And that was just incredible. And sure enough, it was that branch. We just were just blown away by that, because these were things that we would have never even thought or given a second thought about. And so we know that he was definitely with us, and he wanted us to know that. When initially we had talked to David, and he said that that I haven't felt well. I've been feeling really sick for about 3 weeks now. And then he said he jumped back, and he says, "But I wasn't supposed to die." Well, what he really said was, "But shit, I wasn't supposed to die." But David was hesitant on telling us that way, because he just was. But on the July 11th, David said, "Well, does he curse a lot? Because he's cursing like a sailor." And we were saying, "Yeah." So we told David, "Give it to us like he's telling it." And so David did, but I'm trying to clean it up a little bit. And it was kind of funny, because David is the nice gentleman that he is. And so he was very hesitant on really saying it like my brother would say it. I fell in love with David on the phone. Just the moment that he expressed to me things about my brother, I fell in love with him. And I had to meet this man. So I called him and set a time and asked if I could come by and just meet him. And so we met at his place of business. And I just felt amazing with him. I am very comfortable with him. I have the utmost trust in him. I have confided in him in many other things. I've even had some coaching sessions with him, and as well as just happy little conversations. I trust him totally, completely with matters of the heart, and he's helped me tremendously, and I just love him so much.